Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Erik Yasir. My official number is A1M2 18113, and today I will explain about assessment and grading. Okay, so assessment is something you do every day as a teacher, as you judge where students are in the learning process. You are assessing your students when you ask them questions, rate their homework, and listen to their mathematical conversation. Their mathematical conversation. This assessment guides your instructional decision regarding picking, teaching strategies, and where to go from here. Getting as accurate a reading as possible requires that students be observed and assessed in real situations. Hence the term authentic assessment, which is used frequently in educational reform. Assessment should be part of ongoing educational process and should enhance learning. Unlike the standardized tests, which create a grade in learning in order to take measurement, assessment should be part of the natural flow of the classroom. When the curriculum provides a window into a student's thinking, there is a natural time to assess that student. Such an assessment need to be something you assign a specific grade to. It may be simplified for informational purpose, but both for you and for the student. There is often confusion over the difference between grades and learning assessment, with someone believing that they are totally unrelated and others thinking they are one and the same. The truth is, it depends. Grades are often based on more than learning outcomes. Instructors' grading criteria often include behaviors or activities that are not measured of learning outcomes, such as attendance, participation, improvement, or effort. Although this may be correlated with learning outcomes and can be valued aspect of the course, typically they are not measures of learning outcomes themselves. However, assessment of learning can and should rely on or relate to grades. And so far as they do, grades can be a major source of data for assessment. To use grades as the basis for learning outcomes, grades will first have to be decomposed into the components that are indicators of learning outcomes and those that are indicators of other behaviors. Second, grades will have to be based on clearly articulated criteria that are consistently applied. Third, separate grades or subscores would have to be computed for the major components of knowledge and skills so that evidence of students' specific areas of strength and weakness could be identified. For example, although 30% of class may receive a grade of B, the group may all have shown a very high level of competence on one skill set, but only moderate achievement in another. This kind of strength and weakness assessment provides feedback that is useful to students because it can guide and focus their practice to the instructor because it can reveal topics and skills that require further instructional activities, and to the department because it can guide potential change in curriculum to appropriately address areas of strength and weakness. And next, I will explain about types and approaches to assessment. First is formative and summative assessment. Formative assessment is designed to assist the learning process by providing feedback to the learner, which can be used to identify strengths and weakness and hence improve future performance. Formative assessment is most appropriate where the results are to be used internal by those involved in the learning process. Summative assessment is used primarily to make decisions for grading or determine readiness for progression. Typically, summative assessment occurs at the end of educational activity and is designed to judge the learner's overall performance. In addition to providing the basis for grade assignment, summative assessment is used to communicate students' abilities to external stakeholders, for example, administrators and employers. Second is informal and formal assessment. With informal assessment, the judgments are integrated with other tasks. For example, lecturer feedback on the answer to a question or preceptor feedback provided while performing a bedside procedure. Informal assessment is most often used to provide formative feedback. As such, it tends to be less threatening and thus less stressful to the students. However, informal feedback is prone to high subjectivity or bias. Formal assessment occurs when students are aware that the task that they are doing is for assessment purpose. Most formal assessment also are summative in nature and thus tend to have greater motivation impact and are associated with increased stress. Given their role in decision making, formal assessment should be held to higher standards of reliability and validity than informal assessments. Okay, next is continuous and final assessment. Continuous assessment occurs throughout a learning experience. Continuous assessment is most appropriate when student and or instructor knowledge of progress or achievement is needed to determine the subsequent progression or sequence of activities. Continuous assessment provides both students and teachers with the information needed to improve teaching and learning in process. Obviously, continuous assessment involves increased effort for both teacher and student. Final assessment is that which takes place only at the end of learning activities. It is most appropriate when learning can only be assessed as complete whole rather than as constituent parts. Typically, final assessment is used for summative decision making. Obviously, due to its timing, final assessment cannot be used for formative purpose. Next is process and product assessment. Process assessment focuses on the steps or procedures underlying a particular ability or task, such the cognitive steps in performing a mathematical operation or the procedure involved in analyzing a blood sample. Because it provides more information, process assessment is most useful when a student is learning a new skill and for providing formative feedback to assist in improving performance. Product assessments focus on evaluating the result or outcome of process. Using the above examples, we would focus on the answer to the math computation or the accuracy of the blood test results. Product assessment is most appropriate for documenting proficiency or competency in a given skill, like for summative purpose. In general, product assessment are easier to create than product assessment, requiring only a specification of the attributes of the final product. And the last is divergent and convergent assessment. Divergent assessment are those for which a range of answers or solutions might be considered correct. Examples include essay tests and solutions to the typical types of indeterminate problems posed in PBL. Divergent assessments tend to be more authentic and most appropriate in evaluating higher cognitive skills. However, these types of assessment are often time-consuming to evaluate, and the resulting judgment often exhibit poor reliability. A convergent assessment has only one correct response per item. Objective tests attempts are the best example and demonstrate the value of this approach in assessing knowledge. Obviously, convergent assessment are easier to evaluate or score than divergent assessment. Unfortunately, this ease of use often leads to their widespread application of this approach, even when contrary to good assessment practice. Specifically, the familiar and easy with which convergent assessment tools can be applied leads to two common evaluation fallacies. Next, I will explain about steps to developing an assessment plan. There are several steps to follow in creating a new or improved assessment plan. First is examine the learning outcomes that have been outlined by the department for the course or program to be assessed. This should be taken directly from the master syllabus or program approval documents. Second is identify those learning outcomes that will be assessed. Rather than attempting to assess all the learning outcomes on the course syllabus, choose those that seem most critical to overall goals of the course, which can be meaningfully measured. Third is select your assessment tools, methods, or instruments for gathering evidence to show whether students have achieved the expected learning outcomes. Determine if there are existing data sources or tools that may be used, or if new tools must be selected or developed. Select those tools that seem most appropriate to the learning objectives and student population being assessed. And fourth is select the student's population to be assessed. Example, random sample of sections, graduating students, and etc. The fifth is specify procedures for analyzing and interpreting the evidence gathered in assessment. Prior to administering assessments, create a scoring rubric or other method of evaluating results, and determine the departmental standard for performance expectation. The last is determine how the information that results from assessment can be used for decision making, planning, and course or program evaluation and improvement. Developments whereby involved faculty can review the data, make recommendations for change as appropriate, and incorporate such change in the unit's planning cycle. Report findings to the area dean and the assessment steering committee, and include them when submitting curricular change to the curriculum committee. Okay guys, I think enough from me to explain about assessment and grading. I hope you enjoy with my video. Thank you for watching, and I close by saying wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.